to our webinar on the practical strategies for acing the GMAT Quantitative Reasoning section. My name is Sergey, and I'm a senior instructor with AdmitMaster. Thanks so much for answering the question. Let me know where you're coming from. We have people really from all over the world. Some people from North America, some from Europe, a lot of people from Asia as well. So thanks for joining us today. And if you are watching this seminar in recording, then welcome. Now, this seminar is going to be very practical. I really wanted to show you how these strategies work. And in order to do this, we are going to do a couple of questions, and I'm also going to share with you how do you actually study for this test. Now, the strategies that I'm going to share with you will require you to be engaged and really participate here in this class. And if you haven't done this sort of a math in a long time, then some of these questions I'm going to show you are going to take you a little outside of your comfort zone. Because let's face it, the math on the GMAT is all from high school, and high school for most of us has been a while ago. So don't worry, if what I'm going to show you takes you outside of a comfort zone, that's amazing. That just tells us that we are in what's called the learning zone. This is where we really want to be. Right? And if you find yourself in a panic zone, which means I don't even know where to start, then don't worry, we are going to break every step down and you understand exactly how to do these questions. Well, to get us started, let's do the first question. This is going to be a problem-solving question from one of the past exams. This is actually the question that appeared in an earlier version of the official GMAT guide. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds or so to read this question first. So here's the question. All right, so that's been about half a minute. Now, let me know in the chat box, I'm gonna ask you two questions. The first question is, how many times did you read this passage? And the second question is, after reading it however many times, on a scale of 0 to 10, how clear is this question, and do you know exactly what to do in order to get to the right answer? So two questions, how many times do you read it? And 0 to 10, how confident you are in being able to do this question. So let me know in the chat box. Okay, I see most of the people are saying, I've read this question 3 to 4 times. Okay, that's great. And on a scale of 0 to 10, how confident you are in being able to do this question? Yeah, most people are saying 3, 5, some are saying 0, don't know where to start. Okay, now here's something interesting about the GMAT. It is a multiple choice exam. So let me show you the answer choices. And perhaps after looking at the answer choices, you could say, of course. Now it's very clear. It has to be this one. Here are the answer choices. Now, when I do this class live, usually there's like a big gasp for air from the students in the class. And most of the people are saying, are you kidding me? The answer choices make this question even more confusing. They certainly don't help. And the reason why we usually hear this response is that we've learned to do these questions a certain specific way. This is how we learn to do these questions in high school. So let's call it the high school way or the theory way of doing a question. Now, what's the theory that we need to know in order to do this question? Well, first of all, we know that distance is equal to rate times time. The question is asking us how many miles. Miles is a measure of a distance. And usually to find the distance, we would multiply speed, also known as the rate, by the time. So the problem here in this question is that we have two different speeds. The person is going there at one speed and then back at a different speed, but we have a total time t. So what we could probably do is write an equation for the distance from home and the distance back home. And we also know the times together are going to be t if we add them up. We also knew that the distances are the same because the person is going by the same route, right? So that was important. That's why we can build a few more equations. Also, like we have several variables and we can start manipulating these equations. And I don't know about you, but most people I give this question to in a live class after about 5 minutes, just start playing with their phone, getting distracted, look at the ceiling, and they basically just got lost and gave up. So perhaps there's a better way of doing this question, especially since we don't have 5 minutes on the day of the test. We only have an average of about 2 minutes for this question. Let's call this other way of approaching the questions the mastery way. So now we're going to begin the mastery way, which is really the way you want to get if you want to get a good score on the GMAT, by understanding that indeed, in order to find the distance, we just simply take rate or speed multiplied by time. Now, and honestly, if you don't even remember the exact formula, this is just common sense, right? So if I were to tell you I'm driving, say, from Paris to, say, Amsterdam, and I'm driving at 100 kilometers an hour, and it takes me, say, 5 hours, then you're going to tell me right away that the distance between Paris and Amsterdam is 500 kilometers based on this problem. It's never going to occur to us to say, well, instead of multiplying speed by time, why don't we add speed and time? You know, why don't we say, if I'm driving at 100 kilometers an hour for 5 hours, the distance is going to be 105. It just makes no sense, right? Like, nobody's going to do this. Look at the answer choices. In some answer choices, the GMAT is actually trying to do exactly the same thing. Look at answer choice B, x plus t. Well, x is a speed, t is the time. How can you add speed to time? So that actually helps us eliminate B. It's not possible. This is not how we calculate our distance. It cannot even be a part of a formula because we can't add things that don't measure the same thing. Are there any other answer choices that do the same thing? Or how about D, x plus y plus t? How about E, y plus t? So now we've narrowed down the list of choices to just 2. We only have 2 remaining answer choices that could still potentially work. And in these answer choices, we did not add speed to time. So now we have 2. And here's the beauty. How many of them do we really have to look at in order to find the right answer? Only 1. See, if we look at one of them and it's the right answer, we're done. We just pick it and move on. If we look at one of them and it's not the right answer, we just pick the one that's left and move on. That's it. So we're going to look at one answer choice. And just for the efficiency purposes, let's look at A, because it looks like a simpler answer choice. You know, fewer letters, fewer variables. So let's take a look at A. So A gives us x divided by y times t. Now, x divided by y gives us what we call a ratio of 2 speeds, right? So somebody's driving at 50 kilometers an hour, somebody else at 100 kilometers an hour. If we divide one by another, we get 2. 2 is simply a number that tells us how many times this person is driving faster than the other person. So what this means is that if we look at A, we're going to get a ratio of 2 speeds, which is just a number, and then we multiply it by t, which is in hours. And that tells us that the answer is going to be in hours. Do I need hours? No. The question was asking us for miles. That is why A is not the right answer, and C has to be the right answer. That's the only one that's left. And we can literally do this in 30 seconds. Now, here's what a lot of people are going to do when they get to C. They're going to say, okay, Let me check that this is indeed the right answer. Let me do all the working, let me calculate all the formulas, and make sure I didn't make a mistake. Make sure C is really indeed the right answer. So here's a question for you. Why? Why would we do this? We've chosen a strategy. We're very clear why A, B, D, and E are all wrong. The only one that's left is C. It has to be the right answer. This is how the test works. There are 5 answer choices. 1 of them is right. 4 of them are wrong. Now, this requires a little bit of a different mindset when we are approaching this sort of a question. And that really brings us to an important point, and that is what really separates people who get low scores on the GMAT, let's say 500 or an average score below average, from somebody who gets very high scores, such as maybe 700. And in order to answer this question, I'd actually like to use a quote from the GMAT, which is people who make the test. You can find this quote on MBA.com. You can find it in the official guide. Here's the quote. Essentially, what this means is that the GMAT is going to be a very different test compared to pretty much any other test we've ever done. See, most of the tests we've ever done, we're testing our knowledge, essentially testing our memory. Let's say you're doing a test of history. Well, you need to know some history. You need to demonstrate your knowledge of history. However, when you're studying for the GMAT, you're trying to get into a business school, but we're going to a business school very often to learn about business. So to enter into a business school, we do not need to know anything about the business yet. And in fact, the GMAT might give us passages about anything. If you come to a verbal refresher class, and I'll explain how you can do that for free, then you're going to see we're going to do a few passages about completely unrelated topics. We can do a passage on philosophy or on molecular biology or astronomy or history, but the subject matter itself doesn't matter at all. Because what the GMAT tests instead, and that's what you've seen by now in the first question we've just done, are the higher order reasoning skills. These are the skills that really matter in the management classrooms and in the 21st century workplace. Now, does it mean we don't need to know anything? It's just really all about thinking a different way? Well, for the most part, yes. However, just for full disclosure, you do need to have some basic, not really an expert, really basic knowledge of geometry, algebra, statistics, and the English language. And again, you need to know that in order to demonstrate these different types of reasoning skills. And we'll talk about what skills exactly. And if you come to our GMAT Mastery program, we're actually going to teach you a set of skills that we call Think Like a CEO, or Think Like a Senior Manager. The CEO is the ultimate senior manager. And you're going to look at the questions really very differently. Now, this is actually very important because many people, when they are originally approach studying for the GMAT, they say, okay, there's so much math that I need to learn. And they go and load up on these books and, there's these huge, let's say Manhattan Prep books, or they go and purchase access to some of these online study platforms like, Target Test Prep, which gives you like months and months and months of math studying, lots of theory that you supposedly need to know for the GMAT. But did you actually know that the entire theory that you need to know for the GMAT when it comes to math fits on 40 pages in the official guide? Just 40 pages. So what else do you need to know? Well, it's really then all about being able to apply the theory. It's all about being able to use the theory. It's all about having these skills. That's what the GMAT told us, right? It's about the skill. Now, notice this question we just did with Aaron. How much math did we really do? And this is not an easy question, by the way. This is a challenging question. So a lot of people, or sometimes a lot of GMAT, even tutors or instructors, are going to make you believe that you need to learn all of this math and spend lots of time on math. And then maybe you learn a couple of strategies or a couple of tricks like this, and then hopefully you're going to do well on the GMAT. Well, what we're saying is let's not hope we're going to do well on the GMAT. Let's actually learn the skills. Let's learn how to think differently. Let's learn how to shift our mindset a little bit. And yes, math theory is important, but you should be spending probably about 20% of your studying learning theory. The rest should be really dedicated to learning these skills and practicing the skills. And I'm going to show you how you can do this. Now, I love analogies, so I'm going to give you another analogy. And this is perhaps one of the reasons why we are so attached to studying that way and really going and kind of learning all this math. It's because we've been told, mostly by our high school teachers, that knowledge is power. That when we grow up, we are going to be really powerful. That's what we've been told, right? I remember my history teacher. You know, like honestly, how much do I remember from that history class? And I don't really feel like it's somehow hindering my success in life. See, and I'm going to use another analogy. If you want to excel in a certain sport, let's say you want to learn how to swim. Well, one of the things we can do is, of course, go in our bookstore and buy a book, How to Swim. You know, it's going to contain all the theory about how to move our arms and, you know, how to keep your head above water and everything else. And then imagine we're actually going to jump into a pool, jump into an ocean or a lake. How successful do you think we are going to be in swimming after having learned all the theory? Especially compared to someone who took the time to develop the skills, maybe never read the book. So I think you're getting the point by now. It's really all about training your brain to think differently. The math, yes, you absolutely have to know it. In fact, it's so important that when you come to our class, before you even come to the class, that's what one of the things that makes our program very unique is that we're going to give you refresher exercises. So a lot of the things that people spend a lot of time and money studying online, we're actually going to give this to you for free. All this theory that you need to know, we're going to give this to you for free as part of the course. And instead of reading a lot of materials, reading a lot of books, you're going to be doing lots of exercises that are going to be fun. So you're actually going to jump into a pool. You're going to be doing a few exercises. You're going to be warming up for the classes for some of the more advanced ways of thinking. And so this is really, really important. And again, I'm going to show you how you can structure your studies so that you can set yourself up for success. Now, when we look at the format of the test, and this is again brings us back to our skills are more important than the knowledge. And again, don't get me wrong, knowledge is important. It's just that there's not that much of it. Most of the time should be dedicated studying the skill. Now, if you look at this format of the test, you would notice that and most people, when they look at this and say, okay, there is a writing section, I have to write an essay, there's integrated reasoning, don't really understand what it is, but it's not part of the total score, so probably not that important. And then there's a math section and the English section. That's what most people say. In fact, I was reading one of the forums just a couple of days ago when people were saying that, is there anyone to study with? I'm looking for a study buddy because this is an English exam, so we got to learn a lot of English, right? And I'm like, I'm trying to pull my hair out and saying, this is not about English. Especially look at the names of the sections. There is no word English in the names of the sections. There's a word verbal reasoning. There's the word quantitative reasoning. There's also integrated reasoning and analytical writing assessment, right? So I think you get the point. You get the pattern here. By the way, the GMAT is an exam of patterns. I think you get the point by now. It's really all about reasoning. In fact, there is no even word math. There's quantitative reasoning. So we need to learn, again, how to work with numbers. Yes, absolutely. But how to mostly use the logic, use our advanced reasoning skills in order to arrive at the right answer among the answer choices that are given to us. Now, the quant and the verbal sections are the sections that actually contribute towards the total score, the 200 to 800. So let's just consider them more important for the purpose of our discussion because they contribute to the total score. The other two sections are still important. They would still be reported to the business schools. They're still going to look at them. They're still going to evaluate each candidate based on all 4 scores as well as the total score. But the quant and the verbal sections themselves consist of several different types of questions. For example, the quantitative reasoning section consists of the problem solving, which is not about solving problems, by the way, and data sufficiency, which is even more unique because here in this example, you don't even need to solve the problem. You just simply need to demonstrate your ability to understand when it's possible to solve the problem. Now, we are going to take a look at the data sufficiency question today. And by the way, like I have mentioned, we are offering 3 workshops. They're 2-hour workshops about each section of the GMAT. And the next quantitative reasoning workshop is actually going to be on July 8th. You can find all of that on our website, admitmaster.com. And if you're actually watching this webinar after July 8th, then you can find all of the schedules on our website as well at admitmaster.com. Now, the verbal reasoning section actually consists of 3 types of questions: sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension. And the next class on this section is actually going to be on June 17th. Now, what's important to understand about these 2 sections is that they're computer adaptive. So what does it mean to be computer adaptive? Well, what this means is that the test is going to get easier or harder depending on how we do along the test. Now, I usually joke with my students in a class and ask them, who would like to go for the test where all of the questions are easy? And then like most of the people put up the hand, and who would like to go for the test where most of the questions are hard? And usually people don't want to do that. Right? I remember in my university, sometimes you go for the really difficult exam and then you're hoping you're going to get something easy. Like the professor is not going to ask you hard questions because that's how you get an easy A. But here on the GMAT, this is not going to work. See, the test is getting harder if we're answering questions correctly. And there are a lot of questions. There are over 30 questions on each of these sections. So the GMAT is going to adapt, and it's essentially going to either give us easier questions if we don't do well, or it's going to give us harder questions if we do well. So if we want to do well, we need to know how to deal with hard questions. That's what's going to make this test challenging. See, and as long as we know that this is what's coming on the test, we're going to be prepared, right? Again, I like analogy. So if we know we're going to run a marathon, we're not going to train to run 1 kilometer. We know the marathon's coming. The same thing here. If we want to do really well, we will have to deal with difficult questions. So we just need to train ourselves to deal with these difficult questions. And just for the full disclosure, because we're focusing here today mostly on the quant section of the GMAT, the more difficult questions are not necessarily the questions where math is going to be more challenging. We have a lot of our students who get scores in the mid 700s. So I'm talking about 740, 770, 780. Everybody, without exception, tells us that the sort of a combination of the topics doesn't really change very much. So you're not going to see all of a sudden a lot of these different integrals and trigonometry. This stuff is not even tested on the GMAT. And in fact, even some of the types of questions that a lot of people are afraid of, like probability and combinatorics, they're not necessarily that much more common when you get into higher scores. So you might still see like maybe 1 combinatorics question. Even at the 500 level, you might see 1 combinatorics question. It's just going to be really easy. See, what makes the questions more challenging is that they're more tricky. And ultimately what this means is they require you to apply these higher order reasoning skills. So simply doing math is not going to be enough. And that again brings us back to that difference between the 500 and the 700 plus scores. See, people who get a 500 score are not necessarily people who are not good in math. You still have to be good in math to get a 500. Just being good in math would rarely get us far above the 500 or far above that average score in math. We really need to learn these strategies. So plan your time accordingly. This is what takes the most time. I mean, you can learn the theory, honestly, if it's 40 pages, you can memorize it in a week. But developing a skill, that's what takes a little bit more time. And that actually brings us to a very important point. And I want to talk about this now, and then I'll show you some more strategies, and then we'll wrap up by talking about the next steps and where you can actually go from here. And the question is, what resources should I really use? There's so many different resources available right now. I mean, we're really blessed that there's so many things available. There are classes, there are books, there's tutoring, there are YouTube videos, there are some forums. What can we really use in order to help us prepare for the GMAT? Well, let me share with you perhaps on my experience how my test prep worked, just perhaps to put things in perspective. So I decided to do my MBA pretty late in the application cycle. I only had about 2 months before the application deadline. And I realized that I have to do the GMAT, and I also needed to do TOEFL. So I had to do 2 exams as well as prepare my application in just 2 months. So I went on MBA.com, I did some research about the GMAT, and I realized that this is a test with scores between the 200 and the 800. And I thought, okay, well, I probably want to know where is it that I'm starting from. If I were to take this test right now without any preparation, what score would I get? So I took a practice test, and the MBA.com offers 2 free practice tests. You can also take this practice test on our website at trygmat, trygmat.com. So I took that practice test, and I got a score of 650. And I thought, wow, this is a pretty good start. What I also realized as I was doing the questions is that I forgot some of the math terminology. Or quite honestly, maybe I've never learned it because I went to school in Russia. So all my math was always in Russian. And I didn't know what is a chord, or what's a trapezoid, or what does it mean an isosceles triangle. I didn't know all these terms in English. So I started brushing up on these terms. And fortunately, on MBA.com, all the theory that I mentioned to you that fits on 40 pages, most of it's on MBA.com, and certainly all of it's an official guide. So I read it, and I said, okay, I'm pretty comfortable now with the theory. I know the terms, so let me go and take the next practice test. And I did. There were only 2 practice tests available on MBA.com at that time. And I got a score of 700 on my second practice test. And I thought, okay, I feel like this is a pretty good score for the school where I want to go. This is probably going to be enough. So let me go ahead and book my real test. I did. I had my test a week later. I went to a test center and scored 750, my first attempt. And now the whole process from start to finish, from the first time I opened MBA.com to me actually getting the 750 score, took me 2 weeks. And just in case you're wondering, just to show you that everything's legit, this is my score report. I'm not showing this to impress you. It impresses me. I think that's really cool that I was able to do that in just 2 weeks of preparation. Here's my total score, 750, which is the top 1%. Now, in case you're wondering that Sergey is probably a genius, I have to tell you, I am not. Definitely not a genius. Now, for full disclosure, I have studied at the Rocket Science University in the former Soviet Union in Moscow. And this is a university where a lot of the Russian technology and space technology is being developed, and the students are really being prepared for that technology. But nevertheless, I didn't really come up with that world's most famous physics formula. And to be honest with you, the only reason why I actually got into that university was something else. And that was actually the reason how I was able to get to do so well on the GMAT. In fact, let me tell you even more. Nothing from that university ever showed up on the GMAT. What really helped me do well on the GMAT and what helped me actually get into that university, and hopefully there's some of the things that are going to help you get into your dream university. And by the way, I do have my own MBA as well that I've done after I did my master's at this university and my bachelor as well, is that in my high school and in my middle school, I got incredibly lucky. I had amazing teachers who taught me how to think differently, how to think outside the box. Now, I did have some teachers that told me that knowledge is power, but I also had teachers like, for example, this was my math teacher who told me, look, there's certain things you need to know. This is a high school curriculum. But there are things beyond the high school curriculum. There are better ways of approaching the math problems. And this teacher, he was incredibly gifted as a teacher. He actually taught us, everybody in my class, including myself, in my middle school and in my high school. He was my teacher for 7 years, really how to approach these questions differently and how to love math, how to look at math problems from a different perspectives, and how to think outside the box. And as a result, everybody from my class, about 35 people, we all went ahead and we all got admission to some of the best universities in the former Soviet Union. Some of them were abroad as well. So this is really what helped me. I learned the skills necessary for the GMAT at a very young age. And all I needed to do is just review a little bit of the material, learn a little bit of a theory in the English language, and then in 2 weeks, I was able to get a score of 750. And because I learned this so early, not only I then did really well on pretty much any standardized test that I've ever taken, but also that helped me become a really good GMAT instructor. And in fact, I've been teaching now the GMAT for about 12 years. I work with other incredibly smart people, and I consider most of them smarter than me. And in fact, everybody here at AdmitMaster scored 760 or above. I'm the only person who scored 750. I have kind of like the lowest score of everybody else, right? And again, just not telling this to you to impress you, but simply to say that, look, we have some really amazing instructors who you would be working with if you decide to come to our program. And I wanted to show you here an example of one of our students, Daria. She came to us in the spring of 2020 when the pandemic just started and when everybody was afraid. But some people are saying, look, this is the best time for me to really invest my time into studying for the GMAT. This is something I wanted to do for a long time. So with Daria, she took a diagnostic test and she scored 380. Now, this is not a very high score, and many people would be very discouraged. Nevertheless, she was actually really motivated because she wanted to go to a very prestigious university in Europe. She wanted to do her master's. And she said, I really have to dedicate to this program. She joined our course. And in 3 months, she was able to get to a score of 700. So our course was 6 weeks and she studied. Then after the course, she essentially practiced for 7 more weeks. By the way, in our course, we do provide all of the study resources and ongoing support and coaching. So we've guided her all throughout the process. And even after the course is over, she was working with a tutor to help her actually go all the way up to that 700 score that she wanted. And 3 months later, she got that score. And notice how in her comments after the course, she said, in the course, I learned how to think outside the box. I learned how to manage my time and stress. And I learned how to think like a CEO. And the instructor supported me along the way. See, and this is what's really important. And yes, knowing formulas is important, but see, she didn't even mention learning formulas because that's kind of given. I mean, we have to teach you the formulas, of course, and we will. But it's really what goes beyond the formula is what's going to help you get a 700 plus score. That's why, by the way, our live course is close to 60 hours of contact time with the instructor, compared to most of the other courses that are usually like 18, 20, 27, 25 hours. We're going to teach you a lot more of the skill in addition to the formulas. And what's really going to make a difference is your ability to know how to think outside the box, to learn how to manage time and stress, and to learn how to think differently. That's going to be really important. Now, When it comes to my studying, sometimes people are saying, well, look, you haven't really studied at all. And I'm answering, well, not really. I have studied. Well, first of all, I learned these skills for 7 years. And then I also still did use the resources to help me prepare. I, first of all, reviewed the math from MBA.com, and you can do that from the official guide as well. And I did a couple of practice tests, which actually helped me prepare for the GMAT. So here's my offer to you. And that is, if you got really lucky in school, if you feel like you had some really amazing teachers who taught you how to think outside the box, how to manage your time and stress, how to solve these difficult problems under pressure with limited time, then all you need to do is follow what I did. Take a practice test, understand what's missing, just work on reviewing a couple pieces of theory, and then take another practice test. And if you feel that you're ready, just go and do your real test. That's really it. Now, see, the challenge, however, is that most people haven't really been that lucky in school. Most of us haven't really learned how to think outside the box. We were mostly taught the high school curriculum, and sometimes we didn't really have the best teachers. Don't worry, it's never too late to learn these skills. I mean, we have people in our classes anywhere from the age of 20 to almost 60. And the age isn't really a determinant of how successful you're going to be on the GMAT. Anybody can learn these skills. So most people, when they realize, hey, I have to study for this test, simply taking a couple practice tests is not enough, here's what they're saying. Saying, okay, I have an exam to take. Now we go back to how we've been trained to prepare for the exams. So you may remember in your college or university, when we wanted to prepare for an exam, what did we do? We cracked open the books and we reviewed the things from the books. In fact, if you look at the bookshelf in your favorite bookstore, you might notice that some of the GMAT books will actually have the word review in them. Something like, the GMAT review, or sometimes even the companies that teach GMAT classes would call themselves review, like, the Princeton review, or, the Oxford review, or the Stanford review. And see, what this implies is that we're going to review things that we already know. So what can we review? Well, the things we learned in high school. But we've just determined that doing well on the GMAT isn't going to be simply about reviewing things. It's going to be about learning something that most of us haven't learned before. And then most of the time, when people pick up the books, the first book they're going to pick up is the official guide, because it's official, so it's got to be the best. And it's the guide, so it's going to guide us all throughout our preparation process. And then what they realize is that this book, or these books, are simply question banks. They don't actually teach us how to do the questions. I don't know if you have these books, and by the way, if you don't, you should. And if you join our class, we are going to give you the official guide as a part of our program, so you don't have to buy it separately. But see, these books are written by the same people who make the test. So they're not really going to teach us how to beat the test. I mean, this is going to be a little bit of a conflict of interest, right? So even though these questions have explanations, the explanations aren't super helpful. If you looked at the explanations, you would notice they're very theoretical. And very often it takes like 10 minutes to even understand the explanation, yet alone to be able to do that yourself. Where this book really excels is it giving us access to questions from past exams. Because see, how the GMAT works is that the questions from past exams, when they get decommissioned from the question bank on the real exam, then some of them get published in the official guide. And if you pick up any other GMAT book other than the official GMAT guide, all of these other books are actually going to contain simulated questions. because GMAT does not allow republishing of the real questions in other books you can buy in a bookstore, so that everybody actually buys the official guide. So if this is just simply a question bank, but it doesn't actually teach us the strategies, again, because there would have been a conflict of interest from the people who make the test itself, where can we learn the strategies? Well, in this case, most of the people are going to turn into what's called the strategy GMAT books. In fact, you can look through your bookshelf and pretty much any other book other than the official GMAT guide is going to call itself the strategy GMAT book. And here's something interesting. All of these books, with the exception perhaps of the GMAT for Dummies, but I don't think we're going to count that book. This is more of a book for entertainment, not really for the real value. So every other GMAT book other than the official guide was written by the GMAT test prep companies. So by the companies that actually teach GMAT courses. And these books were originally written as supplements to the GMAT class. In fact, if you'd like to know a little bit more about how this whole book industry works and what books are some of the better books and what are some of the books perhaps you should avoid, then you can go on our website and there's a blog post that we wrote recently about how you can really navigate this whole book universe when it comes to preparing for the GMAT, so you can make the best decisions about how you are going to study. But see, when these companies started teaching the classes, originally, they were just giving people the handouts. But then eventually they realized that, wait a second, maybe we can actually publish these books and sell them in a bookstore. We can make some extra money. And because these books, and here's an example of one of the books, again, no product placement, but this is just one of them. So these books are designed to be read before the class, and then the instructor in a class is actually going to teach some of the more advanced strategies. So what this means is that the strategies are actually not in the books. Now they're called strategy books because they're readings for the strategy classes, right? And again, if you think of this, there is a little bit of a conflict of interest, again, because even though some of these books are expensive, like these books are about $200, some of these other books by other companies, you can probably buy for $20, or you can maybe even buy them really cheap or get them from a friend. See, the company that's teaching a $2,000 course wouldn't necessarily want you to buy a $20 book and get all the strategies from this book. That's quite unfortunate. And of course, because the GMAT requires a lot of the really skills development, many things they can't even put in a book. And just for a full disclosure, just in case you're wondering, when you read the fine print to many of these books, they are going to tell you in the book, you're going to find the content of the GMAT. Even, for example, this company, they calling their curriculum the content-based curriculum. What this means is that this is all about the content. Here are some of the things that you need to know. And in the books, they don't necessarily say these are more important things and these are less important things. Did you know, for example, that prime numbers are significantly more important on a real test than permutations and combinations? And yet most people are focusing their efforts on some of the more challenging topics. Yes, they are still important, and not spend enough time on the topics that are going to be a lot more common on a test day. And by the way, again for a full disclosure, just in case you didn't know, this company, for example, that publishes these books, and some of the other companies that publish some of the other books, are actually owned by the publishing companies. So this specific company is actually owned by the same person who owns Amazon. And of course, that's why when you go on Amazon, these are going to be really popular books with lots of reviews, because of course, these books get a lot of attention, a lot of marketing, so that money stays essentially in the family, right? So this actually brings us to an important question. This is it even possible to study with books? Well, if I have two types of books, the official GMAT guide with really good questions that don't really teach me, or the books that don't really teach me how to beat the test, and the strategy guides that were simply written as supplements to the course. So the companies actually publish these guides so that we can read the book and hopefully then at that point understand that, yes, we have to come to the class because the books were written to be read before the class. So that's what they're hoping. You're going to read the book and I'll say, okay, now it's time for me to come to the class and hopefully come to that specific class. That's why they publish the books. And then because you already have the books, they don't have to give you new books. So they save even more money, and it's really good marketing. You know, when you go to a business school, you're going to learn all these strategies of marketing. Really clever marketing. So the question then is it possible to study with books? And I know you're probably expecting I'm going to say no. But the answer is actually, it is possible. And many people do. See, and I myself, I could say I studied with books, even though I actually studied with that free online software from MBA.com. So I didn't even buy any books. You know, some people like to actually read the books. And of course, the official GMAT guide is really, really important because it gives you access to past questions. But see, here's how you can understand whether it is going to be possible for you to study with books. If you can remember a time when there was something you wanted to improve, like maybe it was your finances, maybe you wanted to make a lot more money, maybe you wanted to have a better health or better fitness or better relationships, and a friend told you, there's a book that I know, you should read it. And let's say it's called How to Become a Multimillionaire. Go and read this book. And you actually went to a bookstore and you found that book and you purchased that book and you read it cover to cover. And you implemented every single strategy in the book. And you actually did become a multimillionaire as a result of reading the strategies in this book. If you are this sort of a person, then reading a book about the GMAT is probably all that you need, because you could find these little tidbits and then you can figure out the rest of the things yourself. Sometimes you can just ask some friends for some advice. So if you're this sort of a person, probably studying with books is all that you need, especially if you learn some of these strategies at a very young age in your high school. But here's the challenge, and that is statistically, only about 10% of people read past the first chapter in the books. And we also know by now that the strategy guides were written to be read before the class so that the strategies could be taught in a class. And we also know that the books don't really tell us what's more important, what's less important. And very often they cannot really give us feedback. So how do we actually study? Well, before we get there, I wanted to do one more question with you. Let's actually take a look at the data sufficiency question. This is, again, one of the questions from the past exams. And if you've never seen a data sufficiency question before, don't worry, you're going to see one now. I'm actually going to show you this question yet. I'm going to give you time to do this question. So here's how the question is going to look like. There's a question, and there are two statements. And you would notice that in the question, there's some sort of a situation that's being described, and then there is a question that's attached to it. Now, here is the interesting part. It is impossible to answer that question based only on the information in the question. You always need some extra information in order to be able to answer that question. And that extra information is going to be in a statement 1 or in statement 2, or sometimes you need both of these statements in order to answer that question. Sometimes you actually look at both of these statements and you realize I still don't have enough information. That is why if you look at the answer choices for data sufficiency questions, you would notice that they're always the same and they never contain the answer to the actual question. Instead, they will contain a combination of different combinations, rather, of the two statements. So when you're looking at this question, And you understand that, yes, I need statement one, but maybe statement two is not going to help, then you're going to choose A. Or if you realize that I need both of these statements, but individually they're not sufficient, then you're going to choose C. So that's how it works. Now, if you think about this, by the way, this sort of a question is very managerial oriented, because as a manager, let me ask you a question. Would it be easier for you if you were a manager to do a certain project yourself, or would it be easier to understand if it's possible to do the project and then assign the project to your team members to do? What do you think? Well, I know some people are saying, well, it's going to be easier if I do it myself because those other people don't know what they're doing. But assuming you have good employees, of course, it's a lot easier to simply understand if it's possible to do the project. That is why in data sufficiency, you actually don't need to answer the question. You just need to understand if it's possible to answer the question. So I'm going to give you about a minute to think through this question and figure out which of the two statements you would need in order to answer the question. All right, that's been about a minute. How are you doing? Or if you know what the answer is, or if you think you know what the answer is, or if you simply have taken an educated guess, just please put your answer in the chat box so I can see how you're doing. In the meantime, let me show you, I mentioned this is a question from a past exam, so this is a question that appeared in the official guide. So let me show you how the official explanation is going to look like for this question. Now we're dealing here with a few different variables that we can assign. So we could say that R be the regular price of the shirt and D be the discounted price and P1 is the first profit and P2 is the second profit, and build a few equations. And I don't know about you, but my head's starting to explode and I have a master's of math. When I see this, my stress level is going way up. And I'm like, I'm not sure I can do this on a real test. So perhaps we can look at this question from a different set of eyes. Let's call this the skills-based approach, but I'd like to also call it really the thinking like a CEO approach. This is what Dario was commenting about. This is what a lot of the things that we teach in our course, in addition to, of course, the formulas and all of the detailed strategies. See, let's imagine that we are actually the manager of that store. And here's what we're trying to do. We're obviously trying to increase our profit as a store. And as a store manager, I have an idea. We are going to come up with a promotion. So when a customer comes into our store, now normally they'll buy maybe a shirt and that shirt is at the regular price, and then they'll maybe walk away. But very often they might come in and say, well, okay, it's at the regular price. Maybe I'll wait for a sale. And then they're going to walk away and we don't make a sale. Instead, we are actually going to create a promotion. And we're going to say, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, if you are going to buy this shirt today, we're going to give you the second shirt at a discounted price. So buy two shirts, you're going to pay the regular price for the first shirt, but for the second shirt, we're going to give you a better price. That's very common in clothing stores. And see, the way we're going to do this is we're going to sell the second shirt at the discounted price in such a way that we actually make the same amount of money from selling two shirts that we will from just one shirt. So what does this mean? Well, if we're making the same amount of money from two shirts as we make from one shirt, that means that from the second shirt, we make no profit, right? Now, what this means is that the discounted price of the second shirt is actually going to be sold at the cost to us, the store, because we make no money from that second shirt. All right, so now with this insight, let's actually take a look at these statements and see which statement is going to help us understand what was the discounted price that we know by now is actually equal to the cost to us, to the wholesale cost to us, the store. Statement one. Statement one tells us that the regular price of each of the two shirts is $16. Okay, so knowing the regular price is interesting, but the question was asking us about the discounted price. So that statement by itself is not enough. How about statement two? Well, statement two says the cost of the store, of the cost to the store of each of the shirts is $12. So we're buying these shirts at 12, we're selling them at 16. But see, what we said is that the discounted price of the second shirt is actually equal to the cost to us, the store, and statement two gives us that cost. And we've already determined it's equal to the discounted price. So statement two gives us exactly what we need. And that is why statement two is sufficient. Now, most people in this question think that we need both statements together, statement one and statement two, but we don't. Because the question was asking us about the discounted price, and we can derive it directly from statement two. And that is why the answer is B. Only statement two is sufficient. We can do this in literally 1 minute, and it takes us some time to think and really know how to approach this question. That's again what we call think like a CEO, right? Didn't we think like a CEO? Absolutely. Here in this question. How much math did we do? Not very much. Now, in some questions, we're gonna have to do a little bit of math, but if you're ever doing a lot of math on a question, you're probably doing something wrong. There's always a way to do the question with a lot less math than what most people do. We have to think a little outside the box. We have to know what to look for. And most importantly, we have to have the confidence of using the strategies that are more advanced than what most people are going to use. That confidence is going to be really, really important. So throughout your preparation, you are going to have to develop this confidence. Now, our program, the GMAT Mastery program here at Admit Master, is actually designed to not just teach you the formulas and the strategies, but also help you develop the confidence. And that also requires a plan. I'm going to give you an example of another student, Darini. She was actually in the same class with Daria, coincidentally. We teach a lot of classes, but these two examples of the students, they were actually in the same class in April of 2020. And they did the test almost on the same day, and they actually got the same score, 700. So Darini also studied for about 3 months. And before that, she studied for about 3 or 4 years. And what she told me, and she gave me permission to share this, that she had these books on the shelf, and then once in a while, she's gonna pull them up, she's gonna do a few questions. She got really stressed out. I don't really know where to start. And then she would put them back on the shelf. And then somebody recommended our class, and she was able to get this incredible score. In fact, she gave herself 6 months to do well on the GMAT, and she was able to achieve that score that she wanted, 700, in just 3 months. And then she dedicated the rest of the time to preparing an application. She's actually starting this September in Oxford. And Daria, by the way, is starting her Master of Finance program at the London Business School, the LBS. And notice what Darini was saying is that what helped her the most in her preparation is having the right structure and being a part of a community. It was really the game changer. That structure is really, really important. If you've been studying for a long time, or if you heard of people studying for a long time, sometimes I go on these GMAT forums and I read about people who've been studying for 6 years, for 7 years, right? Sometimes the GMAT forums are great because they give you the community. But the thing is, many people, they're trying to figure things out. So very often the advice you hear wouldn't necessarily be the most qualified advice, because really people who are on these forums are either GMAT instructors who are trying to sell their course or their program, or people who still haven't figured it out. They're trying to study and they kind of giving each other different pieces of advice. Sometimes it's good advice, sometimes it's not. Having the right structure where you know exactly what you need to do, and specifically for the Rini, she said, I need to know, not by week, I need to know, usually our study plan, when you come to our class, we're gonna help you develop a study plan. And usually it's, here's what I do this week. For the Rini, it was, here's what I need to do every day. Here's how many questions I need to do. Here's how I'm gonna look at these questions. Here's what I need to be concerned about. Here's what I'm not gonna pay attention to. Right? Like for example, for her initially it was, I need to do these questions, but I'm not gonna worry about getting these questions wrong. It's completely okay because I'm going to learn. So setting your mind for the right psychology of taking the test is also going to be really, really important. So where do you get this structure and where do you get this community? Well, there are a couple of ways of doing this. The way number one is you could invest in a self-paced preparation program. And the way number two is you can come to a live class. Now, the choice between these two programs is really yours, whatever is more convenient for you. Now, many people choose self-preparation programs because they think they're cheaper. But I'm going to use an analogy of especially our class, and I'm going to tell you what's included in our class. You can think of our class as an all-inclusive program, an all-inclusive vacation, because it includes all the coaching. You can come to a live class. You can ask as many questions as you want. You can be in the class with other people. Versus self-preparation program is kind of like booking your vacation piece by piece. So you book the airline ticket separately and the meals separately and the hotel separately. And sometimes it's cheaper, but often it's actually more expensive. So if you add up all of the pieces of preparation, like many of the prep programs, for example, if you go on GMAT, different GMAT forums, you're going to see a lot of people are commenting about self-preparation programs. And the reason why they would do this is that these self-preparation companies actually pay huge amounts of money to these GMAT forums, like Beat the GMAT and GMAT Club, to actually promote their self-preparation programs. And of course, because the self-preparation programs have huge margins, right? Every student doesn't really cost anything. They can actually pay some huge commissions to these GMAT forums to try to attract as many people as possible to these self-preparation programs, and they have reviews and everything else. But if you look at what it truly costs, then besides the fact that most of the money actually goes towards marketing, there are a lot of things that are not really included. Like usually the paper book's not included, usually the coaching is not included. And if you need coaching, it's usually quite expensive. Like some of the companies charge $300-400 an hour for coaching. So it could really add up. That's why when you're choosing how to prepare, my honest piece of advice, and unbiased because we do offer both options, is choose for convenience, not the price, because it's probably going to end up costing you about the same. And the self-preparation program with different pieces might actually cost you more. And of course, there's opportunity cost as well, because it usually takes much longer to prepare with the self-preparation program because there isn't such a structured program. And also, usually there's like a standard study plan, but having a standard study plan is more like having a standard treatment if you're going to chiropractor. If I'm going to chiropractor, I want a custom treatment, right? I don't want him to do the same as he would be doing on everybody else. So when it comes to the live programs, we offer an all-inclusive live program, and it's really all about helping you develop the skill. Now, most specifically, you would notice that this program has about 60 hours in class over 6 or 12 weeks. So you can take it in a more intensive format, or in a more relaxed kind of 12-week format. And this 6-week format is you're going to be spending about 15, 20 hours, including time in class and homework. And a 12-week, 3 months program is about 10 hours a week. You're going to be in a class that's fairly small and interactive. So it's not going to be like today where you can't really unmute yourself just because of the number of people in the seminar. You're actually going to be able to ask any questions in real time at any time. You can unmute yourself, you can be on the webcam, you can interact with other people in the class, and we're going to give you all the books, all the study materials, all the practice tests. We're going to let you come in and retake our course completely free for 1 year, and we even going to throw in the 3 hours of personal tutoring. So if you really add all of this up, there's a huge, really insane value that we're going to give you. And most importantly, when you come to our program, we're going to be coaching you until you're done. So if it takes you, 2 months, or it takes you 5 months because you have some other things and you can't really dedicate a lot of time for the GMAT, we're still going to be here for you until you're done. That's the most important thing. Now, we offer a couple of formats for this live program. There is a weekend format, and the next class starts on June 12th. And there's also an evening format, which is going to be in July. So every month we start these programs, and when the pandemic ends, when everything's back to normal, we are going to begin offering these classes in the in-person format as well. But right now, these are virtual classes. And when we actually switched to virtual classes about a year ago, we had some students, we had probably close to 100 students in different classes that were taking our program, some of them just starting, some of them almost finished, some of them in the middle. We switched everybody to the virtual format, and everybody without exception said that the virtual format was as good or better, because I can do this from home. I still see the instructors in the classroom. So I feel like I'm actually in a class, but I'm safe and I'm saving some time and money on traveling. And it's actually super convenient. And of course, if I'm in a smaller town or if I'm in a country where I can't really come to this in-person class, I'm still able to take the class. We have a lot of people now from Europe, from Latin America specifically, who are taking our program, and they're saying, these sorts of programs are not even available in our country. But now, thanks to now this push towards virtual classes, I'm actually able to take them. So many people are asking, well, are you going to continue offering virtual classes after the pandemic is over? And the answer is yes, we will. Maybe not as often, because not all of our classrooms are equipped for broadcasting the class online and really to making the class very, very interactive. But we have equipped our classrooms, so we will be continuing to offer these classes. But hey, we're sitting at home right now, so if now is the right time for you to study for the GMAT, then come and join us. And if you sign up a little bit in advance, you could save some money on our preparation as well. You can find our offerings, our current offerings, at admitmaster.com/offer, and you can actually see what's available. Now, in terms of the value, and again, our classes cost about the same as the classes at other companies. And what this really helps us is to attract and retain the best possible talent. We have amazing instructors. So when you come in, you're going to have such a great time. Where we really make a difference is that we hire most of our instructors full-time. So we can provide a lot of value for pretty much the same as, or sometimes a little bit less than what you would pay at other companies. We can give you huge value. For example, we'll give you about 60 classroom hours. Most companies charge about $50 an hour if you divide the number of the cost of the class by the hour. We're going to give you a very sophisticated adaptive online learning platform where you see class videos, lots of explanation, a huge number of different video explanations, as well as a lot of questions to practice on. We are going to give you 3 hours of private tutoring, so that's included as part of the course. We're going to give you GMAT books. So there's some really good books that you can study with that you will need for the class, and we'll even help you with your MBA resume. So all of that's going to be included in our class. And if you were to try to get all of these resources piece by piece, it's going to be close to $5,000. But our program, the regular price for this virtual program is $16.99 Canadian dollars and only $14.99 US for the whole program. And if you sign up at least 30 days in advance, you're going to get our maximum discount, which is going to be $14.99 Canadian, $12.99 US. And the most important thing is many people asking, okay, I'm making an investment. What sort of return can I get? Well, of course, getting a higher GMAT score and getting that higher GMAT score much faster is really important. Of course, actually doing your GMAT, if you come to our refresher class, I'm going to share some interesting statistics with you. How many people who study for the test actually do the test? So do your research and come to our class, and I'm going to give you an answer. So percentage-wise, of everybody who begins to prepare for the test, what percentage of people will actually do the real test? And you're going to be really amazed what that percentage is. So come to that class. Make sure you sign up at admitmaster.com for that free refresher class, math or verbal, and I'm going to share this with you. After our class, of course, you're so much more likely to actually do the test because you're going to be around other people. You're going to be supported and motivated by others as well as the instructor. And the average entrance scholarship that we see among our students is actually $15,000. So speaking about return on investment, making 10 times on return on your investment, and there is a guarantee. Now, our guarantee is we're going to continue working with you until you're done, as long as it takes. Right? For some people, again, it takes 2 months. For some people, it takes longer. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Now, many people are asking, what sort of a results can I expect? Well, we do keep track of the success of our students in a class. And on average, everybody who actually takes the test will get a score of about 560. That's a worldwide average. And in most of the countries, it's kind of about the same. So if you look at Canada, the United States, most of the European countries, it's about the same score. Our students who take our program, our GMAT Mastery program, achieve an average score of 670. And that is the score that is average across the board. But if you really want the higher score, let's say 700 or more, about a third of our students achieve that score. And really, what's behind that average is that many people, when they come to our program, they just say, look, all I need is 650, or sometimes all I need is 600. So they're going to work just enough to get to a 600. But if you need a 700, you're going to get it. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples. And again, I like analogies, so I'm going to give you another analogy. If you say, I would like to learn how to run a marathon, and somebody says, I'd like to learn how to run half a marathon. Well, we're going to train you the same way in a class, but you're going to train a lot more intensively. Maybe you're going to do a lot more homework in order for you to run a marathon versus somebody who just wants to run half a marathon, right? Make sense? All right, so if you need it, if you have a certain goal, a certain target, you will be able to achieve it with the right dedication. And I can give you thousands of examples of people who did, but I just wanted to give you 2 examples. The first example is Brian. He came to our class and said, guys, I have 2 months to prepare for the GMAT. Literally just 2 months. I don't have more time, just 2 months. Can you help me get a score of 760? And we said, okay, no problem. Here's what you need to do. You're going to have to work really, really hard. And he put in 30, 35 hours a week. At that time, he wasn't working. He was actually moving to a different state. He got a new job at Google, and he just said, within 2 months, I have to really do this. So he took our course. It was a 6-week course. And then literally within a few days after the end of the course, he took his test and he scored 760, and he got an offer at Wharton. It was super dedicated and a lot of time that he could dedicate during the week. Here's another example. Fionn came to a class and said, look, I really just need 650. Her diagnostic score wasn't that high. And she called me. We worked together. We were coaching her. She came to our class. And then about 7 months later, she calls me and says, Sergey, I just got a score of 760. What can I do with this amazing score? And I'm like, wow, Fionn, you just wanted 650. How did you get 760? She's like, well, you know, I really enjoyed the process. I love doing these questions. I can spend about 4 or 5 hours a week after the course is over. So I thought, I'll take my time and I'll do my test when I'm ready. And that's what she did. And by the way, Fionn is a nurse. She works in the emergency room. She works shift work. It's really hard work, a lot of physical work, and she has some other jobs as well. And yet she was super dedicated, and she recognized, maybe I need a little bit more time. I'm going to achieve that target. So whatever the target you need, as long as you set realistic timeline, we are going to help you study as efficiently as possible and get you the score that you need to get into your dream business school, and ideally with a scholarship. Now, if for whichever reason it's not practical for you to come to our live class, which is really going to be an amazing experience, then you can take our self-study programs. Now, there are two programs that we offer. One of them is almost the exact copy of our live class, but this is where you're going to be taking classes at your own pace, on demand. Everything else is the same, and it's slightly more affordable. You're still going to have access to the instructor. You're still going to have 3 hours of private tutoring. Now, the GMAT Express program is where you're going to be studying completely by yourself. So we're going to give you access to shorter classes. They're not going to be full recordings of our course. They're going to be shorter classes on different topics. They're going to be fewer resources. They're not going to be any books, and there isn't really any instructor support, but it's a lot more affordable. So if you just need a quick refresher, or if just a few topics that you need to review, or if you maybe worked already with a private tutor or with a friend and you just need access to practice resources, then this might be a program for you. You can actually see the demos of these classes, and you can register for them at admitmaster.com/offer. And for the GMAT Express program, you can get access to as little as 1 month to this program and as much as 12 months. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd love to stay in touch. So I'd like to encourage you to come to our classes. Now, first of all, if you are really super committed, yes, I need this program. Yes, I need a high GMAT score. Yes, I understand that I need some coaching. And yes, that is why I'm going to commit to come into a GMAT mastery program. Then come and join us. Our next course starts on Saturday, June 12th. This is going to be our weekend course. Our next evening course is going to be in July. And of course, if you're watching this seminar sometime after our live seminar, then you can always find the schedule on our website, admitmaster.com/offer. Now, we do offer longer workshops, longer refresher classes, and our next refresher class is going to be on June 17th. But again, you can go on our website and see the schedule. We offer these classes twice a month. There's a quant class and there's a verbal class. We also offer the GMAT practice test. It's a completely free test. You can go to trygmat.com and you can see what it's like to experience the GMAT, what it's going to be like to answer these questions. And most importantly, what score would I get if I were to take this test right now? So you can find all of that at admitmaster.com/offer. And also, quite often we offer a chance to win a free course. So if you're watching this right now in a live format, then please go right now to admitmaster.com/offer. There's going to be an option to enter into a draw to win this free GMAT Express course. And if you're watching afterwards, then check out that page. You might see that same offer. Even if not, they're going to be free refresher classes and free demos of our programs. Well, thanks again for joining us today. It's been a pleasure spending some time with you. I look forward to connecting with you. You can also sign up for a free one-on-one consultation with me. You can go on admitmaster.com. There's going to be a button to book a free consultation. You're going to pick a time in a calendar, and we are going to connect, and I'm going to help you figure out what is the best way for you to study. I'm going to help you understand your strengths and weaknesses so that you can be successful on the GMAT and your application to your dream business school. Thanks again for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you soon.